I'm going to let Zach take it over. He's going to dig into the tool demos, some really incredible stuff that you haven't yet seen on our website. I hope you enjoy it.
Applause, that's amazing. I wasn't expecting that. So good morning. My name is Zach Parrish. I work for Epic Games. I'm a tech artist out there, which essentially means that my job is to play with Unreal Engine 4 all the time and play with all the cool toys and features, and then I get to show it off to people. This might mean I have the coolest job ever, but the jury's still out. Now I'm curious, how many of the folks in the audience right now are students? Oh my god, that's like all of you. I should have asked how many aren't. Okay, how many of you have been playing with Unreal Engine 4 already? A few of you, okay. So for those of you who haven't, who has experience with UDK or Unreal Engine 3? That's a large chunk, that's very cool. Hey, let me get out a PowerPoint. I did not bring a PowerPoint. I'm not sure if I should apologize for that. Instead, we're actually going to be taking a look at stuff right inside of Unreal Engine 4 today. And what I'm going to do, so we have time here, right? So for the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to give you guys kind of a tools demo, show you some of the features that are available in Unreal Engine 4, and some of the projects that we at Epic have put together to help you learn more about the engine and make you a little bit more comfortable as you build your game projects. Then we're going to take a little break because I've had a whole lot of coffee. And then once we come back from that, I'll show you guys some of the more advanced aspects of the engine. Actually, one of my favorite features, which is Blueprint, our visual scripting system. You'll learn more about that as we go forward. So, for starters, well, I'm sorry, real quick, just to refresh my memory. About half a dozen of you have been playing with Unreal Engine 4? Are you guys liking it so far? Yeah. This can totally be a little bit of an interactive demo. You guys are welcome to ask questions, get my attention. If you need me to go back over something I say, please feel free to just be friendly in here. It's totally fine. If you heckle, there may be severe consequences. But there may not be, I'm not sure yet, I haven't decided. So what I'd like to do for starters is give you guys just kind of a quick introduction and overview to the user interface for Unreal Engine 4. This is most helpful for those of you who've been playing with UE3. Obviously things look a lot different now. We have completely redesigned our UI solution for the editor toolset using a system that we call Slate. So because you have the source code for the entire engine, you also have access to Slate, so if you want to start writing your own editor interface pieces, you can totally do that for the first time ever. It's very easy to do. So at a high level run through, we have, I always feel obligated to mention the menu bar across the top, but really whoever cares about the menu bar on any application, so we'll kind of gloss over that. You got a toolbar up here across the very top of your interface with a lot of the more important things you're going to do, like saving, or playing the game. So I can just hit play, jump in, and start running around in my level. And of course, this is a completely accurate representation of what the game is going to look like. We also have access to things like blueprints, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. And we have the power to simulate the game, which means if I don't necessarily want to play, and I just want to see what the game would do if I wasn't in it playing on its own, I can just simulate and stay back here in the editor and still move around, play, and do things. Now, over to the left-hand side, we have the modes panel. The editor can now be placed in a variety of different modes to help you get whatever job it is you're trying to do done. So, for instance, by default, this is in placement mode, which allows me to place objects into the map. And we'll do a little bit of this later. We'll actually do kind of a live demo where I'll build an environment. But for instance, I can bring in a piece of geometry just by dragging and dropping straight from the placement browser, or delete it when I'm done. But of course, there's other things I can add too. I can add things like lights, or things like trigger volumes, basically anything that is an inherent part to the engine that I need to make my game, it's all available right here. And we have some other modes as well. We have the ability to paint, so I can do Vertex Painting right here in the viewport. We can work with landscape, so if I need to make any mountainous areas or any terrain, I can do that as well. We can paint down foliage, and we still have geometry mode for those of you who remember playing with BSP brushes back in the day. Quick heads up, the term BSP is steadily going away. We're going to start calling it geometry. Throughout today, if I call it BSP a few more times, please try not to rip me too much. I'm still trying to get used to it. So jumping down a little bit, we have the content browser. If you guys are familiar with Unreal Engine 3, you remember the content browser, but it has had quite a facelift now. So we have a list on the left that gives us access to all of the folders in our project. By the way, again, this is just kind of for the UE3 people in the crowd. We got away from packages now. Everything in your Unreal Engine 4 project is its own asset. which makes transitioning your asset from one project to the other easier than ever because you don't have to worry about those package dependencies that you had to stress about before. So the content browser is very easy to access, highly filterable, so it's very easy for me to expand the filters. If I'm looking for something like materials, I can just jump to whatever folder I want to find them in, filter by material, and here they all are. You'll also notice a few things, like if you take a look at the icons there in the content browser, we're getting real-time feedback, so I can see what things like that will look like. If they're animated, I can see the animation on them. I can also do a live 3D preview of each thing. So if you take a look, down here at the very bottom, I have view options, and you'll see we have thumbnail edit mode. And when I turn this on, I can actually click and rotate any object here in the content browser. So I can zoom in on it, I can check it out from multiple angles. In the case of materials, I can swap out the object they're applied to. So if I want to see that on multiple objects, all without having to open it up. So I get fast access to that kind of thing. Now that's also useful for things like static meshes. So if I want to take a look at a mesh, I can preview it right here without having to bring it into the world. Of course, when I'm done, I can just click on Done Editing, and whatever I've done will be saved as the new thumbnail. So it's also a way to kind of keep thumbnails nicely arranged. Now, we have the viewport, which is big, it's beautiful, it's awesome, allows you to see your world. We're not going to worry too much about that at the moment, because I could go on to about how you navigate it and whatnot, but you'll see me do that, and it's not as much fun when you don't have a computer in front of you to play. On the right-hand side, we have the scene outliner. Do I have any Maya people in the room? Anybody play them? Oh, thank you so much. So usually, I ask that question, and most of the folks in the room are like, I've never touched Maya, but they use Max, and that's fine. Max has an equivalent as well, but I'm a Maya person from way back, so it kind of warms the cockles of my heart. So we have the scene outliner. Actually, this is just like the outliner in Maya. This gives you a list of all of the actors or objects that are live in your game that currently exist in your level. So you have quick access to search through them, to group them into folders if you like. So a very useful thing. And this will actually update live as you play a game. So if you're spawning things like projectiles, bombs, characters, whatever, that list will constantly update. You can keep track of what's going on in your game. In the lower right-hand corner, we have the details panel. Really, this is just a properties window. So it's context sensitive. As you select different things, it will update to show you the properties for whatever it is you have selected. Now, that's just the parts of the interface you can see. For anybody who has any experience with the Unreal Engine, really in any of its flavors, there's a lot of editors buried within it. So, for example, if I take a look at any of the materials, I can double-click on one of them in the content browser, and that's going to bring up our material editor. Which again, I like throwing out treats just for the folks who've been playing with UE3 in the past. We have really streamlined the material editor, made it a whole lot easier to use, and now it finally moves from left to right. And I don't know why, but that really excites me, because having to read everything in the opposite direction was always kind of fun. But now it's also easier than ever to create nodes for your network. So for example, you can just drag an empty wire out into space, type out what you need, and not only does it come in, but it's already connected and ready for you to use. So creating these materials is faster than it's ever been before. And there's plenty of other editors to be had. We're not going to necessarily go over all of them. What I'd like to do real quick though, now that you kind of got a general idea of the interface, I do want to mention how accessible and how customizable this interface is. You've already seen me grab a couple of the splitter bars and slide some stuff around, so obviously the interface is very fluid, but you can also grab any of these tabbed panels you see and rip them off, float them however you want, redock them pretty much anywhere you need them to be, and it's the first time we've ever been able to do that. So you can completely redesign the UI to however you like to work, which is super handy once you get into multi-monitor setups, which I highly recommend you do, because working on one monitor, even for a demo, it's a little awkward sometimes. So next, let's take a look at some of the projects that we have made available to folks who are just getting into the engine. So everything I'm about to show you is completely available via our marketplace. Folks who just come in, feel free to grab a seat. You don't have to be shy. There's plenty of seating kind of scattered around. If you've already got a seat and people are coming in, please try to make room for them to sit down. So one of the projects I like to show off the most, probably, is our Content Examples project. This is actually so important that when you sign up for Unreal Engine 4, we automatically queue this one for download, because we want you to have this so very badly. Load up. So the Content Examples project is really just a collection of levels that we have put together to help showcase a variety of the features of Unreal Engine 4. So for example, I'm just going to go to File and choose Open Level. And you see I have this massive list of levels, each one showing off a different aspect. So let's grab something, we'll start off kind of simple. We'll grab one over the material properties, right? So we'll open this up. So when you start editing a material, and actually something else I can point out, it's compiling the shaders in the background. It's going to do this asynchronously. So I can still move around, I can still edit things in the level, and as soon as that's done, then everything will kind of clean up and all the shaders will come in. We're also doing this with things like building lighting. So if you have experience in Unreal Engine 3, for instance, if you have ever built lighting, traditionally what you had to do is click build and then you walk away for sometimes a few minutes, for sometimes significantly longer. So we've done away with that. You can now start building your lighting, and as long as you're not doing anything that invalidates your lighting, like moving meshes around, you can continue working. So by all means, open up the material editor, work on a particle system, anything you need to do. This is like a double-edged sword. Some people get happy about this, other people groan. We're working hard to eliminate coffee breaks. So now that all of those are compiled, let's take a look at any one of these materials. So I'm going to select any of these objects that you see here, and you'll notice over in the details panel, we have access to all of its properties, and we have the materials that are applied to it. So I'm just going to double click on the material right here in the details panel, and that opens it up here in the material editor. So what we're looking at in this actual level is when I select the main node, the base of this material, we have a series of properties. We have things like the blend mode, the decal mode, things like translucency. And the first time you look at this, we don't expect you to have any idea what they do. And you're probably going to be like, well, what can I do to test them out? Do I need to make a whole bunch of materials and plug stuff in? Well, the truth is we've done it all for you. So as you go through the Content Examples project, by the way, I'm just going to hit G to go into game mode. That hides out any of the little actors and icons we don't necessarily need to see. So here, this first stand just shows off the blend mode property and the different ways you can use it. So each little item there shows you what that setting is going to do. And you can just go stand by stand and see an example of each property and how it should be used. So in this case, this is pretty simple, right? It's just taking a look at various materials, and you can, if you want, you can grab each material, you can open it up, see the settings that made it possible, and you can play with them and make changes to them yourself. If you like any of these materials, you can also just grab them and use them in your own projects, if that's faster than having to create one on your own. So obviously this goes on because there are a lot of different properties you can change on materials. So in this case, we are actually bypassing depth of field, which always throws me off every time I go in there because I feel like my contact lens slipped again. So you can see, like, where outside everything looks fine, but as soon as depth of field hits, those materials on the right are bypassing that and they're remaining sharp. I have several different examples as well. Now let's jump out of this level. Let's take a look at some other things. So moving on to slightly more complex topics, we have examples of navigation mesh. So here we have a really simple character that is just moving back and forth in the level. And I can hit the P key and I can actually visualize the navigation mesh he's moving around in. So we can see how our characters kind of navigate through. Here we have kind of a one-way setup. You see the little line there means that he can run off this ledge and hop off of it, like so. But that's a one-way connection. He can't go back up that. So now he's going to navigate back around the edge. So it's just showing off new features of the nav mesh system. Now one that I like to show off, probably, okay, hang on. I always want to show off the cool stuff, but for the sake of dramatic effect, we'll probably hold off on that one because you'll see some of that later. One more and then we'll kind of move on. So here's an example of cloth, which if I go ahead and simulate this, you can see our Apex cloth solution. And we've tried really hard to make these examples as practical as we can. So here we have an actual rundown of the different types of fabric you might want to create. So of course you see like burlap, silk, rubber, and so on. So there are the settings right there that you would need to make that happen in your own games. And other examples of cloth on static and skeleton meshes, on animation. I love that we actually have a pocket set up. I don't know why that excites me, but for me it's always the little things, right? a demo of cloth collision. And of course over here, hang on, I gotta run all the way to the end. Down at the very end, we have a little playable character that you can possess and run around, and you can see cloth on an in-game character. Out of curiosity, does anybody recognize this guy? Yep, he's from Samaritan, good call. All right, so that's, at a glance, that's the Content Examples project. Of course, there's a lot more levels in there, and we are working hard to release new levels all the time. In fact, this latest release we've got of UE4 that's coming up very soon is going to have some new levels for you to open up and play with. Now, let's check out some of the other projects we have to offer as well. So, we also have games that you can play. Because, oh, right as I say that too, right? That's like the story of my life. As soon as patience runs out, we're pretty much done. So this is a game that we actually put together just to help show off how to build different types of games. I'm just going to go ahead and play this live right in the Viewport. By the way, I suck at this game, so, okay. You how to play. You jump over obstacles and you slide under other obstacles. So that's all there is to it. It's just a little platform running game to kind of get you, I guess, started with how to create these types of games on your own. And we have a lot of these different projects and we're working on more all the time. So actually let me jump out of there, open up another project. Now, there's another demo that, I'll be honest, I'm usually a little reluctant to show to people because I'm not sure if folks are usually ready for this level of graphic fidelity. So I'd like to remind people that what you're about to see is not pre-rendered. This is actually playing back live. I know, try to remain calm if you can. Revolutionary. You've never seen a game like this, ever. Always during demos, right? Always during demos. Now the great thing about this example, actually, to kind of get on a semi-serious note, is this was actually created by one of our artists, not by a programmer. And it was created entirely using Blueprint, which is our visual scripting system available in Unreal Engine 4. For those of you who are familiar with Unreal Engine 3 a little bit, we had Kismet, which was a visual scripting system entirely dependent on your levels. For Unreal Engine 4, we have evolved that into something that is far more robust and powerful. So what I'm going to do is show off the actual blueprint that makes this game possible. It's all one single visual script. And I'll admit, there's a little bit going on here, but the good news is actually a lot of this is actually not connected right now. So there's already support that is set up and waiting to be connected for things like leaderboards, for bringing in ads if you put this on a mobile device. It's all kind of set up and ready for you to go. But to show you how easy it is to manipulate a network, you'll notice there's already some comments here to kind of help guide you around. And here we have the section for the flapping. So this animates the upward movement on the chicken whenever we tap. And if we take a look, we've got a timeline here that's called flap up. Now, timeline, for those of you who might have a little bit of experience with UE3 or 4, essentially that's matinee light. That is a way to apply animation curves to an object. If we open this up, there's actually the curve that defines how the bird is moving up and down. That's really all there is to it. But this is multiplied by a numeric value of 500. Do I have any programmers in the room? Actually, wow, that's a pretty big turnout of programmers. So when you see a number that is kind of punched into a node like this, that's essentially the same thing as hard coding. What I'm going to do real quick, so what we've done, we've taken the vertical movement. Okay, nobody can actually read typos on the screen from here, that's fine. So we've taken the vertical movement and we've multiplied it by 500. I'm going to turn that into a variable, something we might want to change later. And let's name this variable something like flap height. And then I'm going to make it public. Now watch this really carefully. I'm going to kind of move the screen around a little bit here. Now I have the blueprint for this game selected, and I'm going to close off some of its properties, all the stuff that I don't necessarily want to see. Let's select this variable that I've created, and let's put it into its own property category. Let's call this cheater. And now when I compile, check it out. Over here in the actual details panel, we have a new group of properties called cheater with a variable flap height. So let's pull that from 500 down to, say, 250, and then let's just replay the game. Yeah, awesome sound effects. And now we have Tappy Chicken with precision control.
It's the only way exactly how to win this game.
You know, actually, the last time. So, honestly, last time I gave this demo, I just turned off collisions and made everybody watch me go up to 63. But you guys seem pretty cool, so I won't do that. So, again, just to kind of reiterate, we have a lot of projects that we have made freely available for you to download, to dissect. You're welcome to pull any elements from them into your own projects if they'll help you. The bottom line is we want you to be successful. We want you to get your hands on these tools and start using them, start making games. Now this is something that we tend not to stress, but I mean for obvious reasons, but you guys are college students for the most part. I understand some of you are. So that $19 bear, I was in college once, I still remember vividly. That $19 a month, the first thing to mind would be like, I'm already struggling to buy ramen, right? So I do like to mention that once you grab Unreal Engine 4, what you download is yours to keep. And it is not going to magically stop working one day. So if you are on the fence, you're not sure if you want to try out Unreal Engine 4, or you're worried about the investment in any way whatsoever, we strongly encourage you just to throw out that $19 one time, and if you're still worried about it, cancel for a while. The tools that you download, the source code that you download, those are yours to keep developing with. You're not going to switch off. When you're ready, once you feel like you understand the tools well enough, then you're welcome to come back, resubscribe, get the latest version, get all of the new content that we make available. Because that's what we're doing, is we're incentivizing the subscriptions by way of adding new content, adding new features, updating the engine. But if you're satisfied with what you get that first month, we encourage you to use it. Get used to Unreal Engine 4, get a project going, get some funding if you want to, jump on Kickstarter, get things rolling. And then when you're ready, let's subscribe and let's make some awesome games. Now, all of that stuff out the way. Oh, I do have some other cool things to show, but maybe we'll, oh, okay, sorry. You guys want to see some like cooler looking stuff?
Yes.
Yeah, that's probably why you're here, isn't it? That happens, okay. Who's here for the graphics? See, it's a trick question, right? Some of you are like afraid to raise your hand. You're like, well, I'm here for the gameplay, but the graphics are cool too.
Who's here for blueprints?
Who's here for blueprints? A few of you. That's okay, we're gonna do some cool things with Blueprint, and if you weren't here for Blueprint before, you will be when you leave. I can convert you. I can also load a really high-end, gorgeous map, apparently. Oh, did you guys, I guess, since it came out in GDC of 2013, I can't believe it's already 2014, everybody got to see the Infiltrator demo, right? You've all seen that? Maybe we could open that, dig through it, if you guys were up for that sort of thing. Oh, I love loading maps the first time. Okay, so we'll come back to that one. Let me diverge just a little bit. So some of the stuff that I want to show, we might actually show after our break, because we are kind of running close to the end of my first session. We'll let this kind of compile shaders for just a moment, and we pop back out here to the background. So what I want to do is give you kind of a feature walkthrough, show you some cool things that, that the engine can do, show you how to build some environments. So to get started, let's just build a simple room. We'll populate it with a few assets and show how quickly and easily we can do that sort of thing in Unreal Engine 4. And in the background, because I am doing so many things at once, in fact, let me tell that one to stop. We're busy now. Thank you. All right, cool. So let's start off just by building a really simple set and show how easily we can do that. So I'm going to bring in a piece of geometry from the placement browser. Just a quick drag and drop, and it appears, and that map I was trying to open a minute ago completely jumps in. Now, I had that planned. I intended to do that. I'm glad you're all impressed by that. So this is the beautiful interlude, right? We'll just take a look at some pretty graphics. This is another showcase that we have made available to the public to showcase particle effects in Unreal Engine 4 and some of the cool things you can do with them. So that's still compiling shaders, and it's a good idea to let it keep doing that because I want you to get the full impact of how beautiful that map is. So in the meanwhile, we'll do two things at once. I kind of like this because it does kind of show off how lightweight and how streamlined the engine has become. We have a really high-end map running over in that other instance of the editor, but I'm still over here working in this one, and everything's going to work just fine. So let's take our little piece of geometry I just brought in, and let's resize it real quick. By the way, for those of you who've been working in the Unreal Engine for a while, this is BSP. You'll notice that I'm not having to rebuild. I am just quickly grabbing the settings of the brush, I'm changing them around. I can move it, put it wherever I want it to be, and I don't have to rebuild the geometry. Everything is just updating live in real time. Let's take this brush, I'll make a duplicate of it, and we'll set its brush type over to subtractive, so you can see it's carving out some geometry. We'll resize this to make it a little bit smaller. Looks about right. And then with the careful application of snapping and not hitting the Windows key, I will make this into a really simple two-walled set. That looks pretty good. Sorry, I'm like a precision nut, right? All right, so we've got a really simple set. Let's put a door in it. So this negative shape that I've got, I'm just gonna really quickly dupe that off. Alt drag, same as it always was, if you're curious. Let's give this some door-like dimensions. So in X, we'll say about 20, which is our wall thickness. By the way, I don't know if you guys obviously cannot see the numbers I'm punching in. So for a door, we're gonna go 150 in width by 250 in height. Those of you who have no sense of size and scale like me, that's in centimeters. So we've officially moved Unreal units over to centimeters, making it a lot easier to gauge the size of all the objects in your games. We'll go ahead and hit N to slap that down to the floor and sink that into the back wall, and voila, we get our own little doorway here. Now, let's make this a little bit prettier. I want to put some brick material down on the walls, and I want to do it quickly. So I'm just going to grab one of the wall surfaces and then run a quick algorithm to select all the adjacent walls. And over here in the content browser, I can just poke around and find, let's say, this little brick material here, drag it onto one of them, and it applies to everybody. For the floor, we could grab a little wood floor, like so. Let's rotate that 45 degrees, because that's stylish. Everybody likes that sort of thing. We'll put something shiny up on the ceiling, just to show off some reflections, and just like that, we have a very simple environment that we created in just a few moments. Now, let's start populating this with some objects. So I've got what might be the most stylish table and chair set ever. I'm so glad people laugh at that one. I told that joke at GDC, people were like, yeah. Now I've also got a ceiling lamp to bring in. Now this ceiling lamp was created using Blueprint, which again is our visual scripting system. And you've already seen a little bit of that with the amazing Taffy Chicken. What that means in this case is this is more than just a mesh. This is something that is built up of a variety of components. It has a mesh, it has a light, and it has some scripted behavior to control how it works. So I can select it and I can actually turn it on and it starts illuminating the scene. Let's go into game mode to get rid of the any extra details we don't need to see. We can also do some slightly fancier stuff too, like I can make a duplicate of it and change its light type to a floor lamp with a single checkbox, hit the N key to slap that down to the ground, and now I have the same asset twice in the level, of course doing two different jobs. For the door, we'll just bring in a little door mesh, which somewhat alarmingly conveniently fits right into that hole, like I've done this demo a couple times. So with that, let's go ahead and just test this out. So we'll play from the current camera position. And I can just walk around, of course, everything looks great. And the door just works, because this door was also created using Blueprint. In fact, we can select it, we can open up its network. And there you go, there's all the behavior that makes that door open. And now it's a little bit more complicated than your normal swinging door, but that's because it's actually gauging where the player is standing and swinging in two different directions. Okay, so now that we've built a little environment, let's go back to our little interlude. And I just have to show you this map because it's awesome. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm just going to hit play, and then we'll go full screen on this. This is still playing back in the editor. We've just made the viewport full screen. Looping. And of course, if you want, you can fly around this. It's just a game environment that you're welcome to explore. And there's a lot of really fun and pretty things going on here. And we have a lot of examples like this that ship with the engine that you can take apart. Also, this is just information for your edification. Did anybody remember the Elemental demo we released a couple years back? Very soon that is going to be in your hands if you want to take that apart and play with that as well. So let's jump back. I can go ahead and close this now. Let's take a look at some of the other features of the engine. So here we have an example of several of our materials. So we have now moved on to a physically based material system. So for instance, instead of using things like diffuse, specular power, and whatnot, we're actually using real-world physical terminology to define our materials. So here I have base color on the far left, and as I change that, you can see the color of the object changing. We also have roughness. So just like in the real world, the more rough or the rougher a surface is, the less shiny it's going to become. So here with a very low roughness value, you see it's very glossy. And as we increase roughness, that glossiness blurs out and is eventually obliterated. We can also control how metallic a surface is. So this surface, while it looks like shiny gray plastic, if we increase its metallic parameter, you see it change over to chrome. So using just those three properties, you can really define a wide variety of physical surfaces. Now I'm going to kind of shoot through these just for the sake of time. So we have kind of a security camera example. Here we have some materials where the actual material itself is perturbing the vertices of the mesh. So if I jump into wireframe mode, you can actually see the wireframe being disrupted by the material. Here we have an effect where we're taking the final rendered image of the scene and we're feeding that through a material and doing some changes on it to create kind of this Tron-style glowy effect. This example is just doing a wipe back and forth between one of the many render buffers that we use to draw each frame. So in this case, we're looking at the roughness buffer, or how rough each one of these surfaces are. We can now also separate objects, or separate materials into material layers. So here we have 4 small rockets, each one with its own material type. We have aluminum, chrome, copper, and red plastic. And the big rocket in the back is actually using all of them as individual layers and placing them on the surface with pixel accuracy. And I just have to show this one off too, because it's fun. So here we have 3 different types of material. We have ice, wood, and metal. And I can throw fire at them. And you see how they react one way. Or throw water, and you see they react an entirely different way. So there's a lot of power in animating and updating your materials. So now I want to talk a little bit about Blueprints, which I've mentioned a few times throughout this demo. Blueprint is, again, our visual scripting system. Now, you've seen it at this point to create entire games. You saw me I had a little ceiling light that had some Blueprint behavior. Now we're going to dig a little bit deeper into it. I'm going to simulate the game instead of playing, and we'll select this little bouncing ball and open up its Blueprint graph. Now, this guy's graph is pretty simple. All we're saying is we have a little timeline, which is essentially, again, just an animation curve that is constantly updating the location and the scale of this ball. So I'll try to make the most of my screen space here. Now notice as I play the game that the wires that make up this network are actually starting to illuminate and glow. You can watch data move through a Blueprint network, which is a powerful debugging tool. If you're not getting the behavior you need, watch those wires and make sure that what you want to have happen is actually executing within your script. Now also you'll notice that on each bounce, this lower branch is firing, and that's creating a little wave ring effect you see down there. I'm going to right click on this bottommost node, and I'm going to add a breakpoint. Now, all of my programmers in the room know what a breakpoint is. So let's go ahead and add it, and you'll get to see. The next time that node gets hit, it pauses the game and jumps us right to that location in the Blueprint graph. This is a very powerful way to debug your Blueprint graphs, as if you're not getting expected behavior, you can set these breakpoints up anywhere you need them, and even if you don't have the Blueprint window open, it's going to pause the game, open up the window, and say, hey, that thing you were looking for, it just fired, that just happened. Now what do you want to do? We can just step forward, one more execution if we want, or if we're satisfied, we can just resume and keep on playing. We'll go ahead and remove that and continue. Now, of course, that's kind of a simple setup, just for doing something like bouncing a ball up and down. You can also use Blueprint to create powerful level design tools. So here I have a simple metal rail, but it's actually a Blueprint object with its own procedural length. So I can change a property and make that rail longer or shorter, and that length is independent for each instance of the rail. And of course, if I need to do something like rotate it, everything just works. So in this way, I can quickly build tools to help my level designers get their jobs done far more quickly. Now, blueprints can also communicate with one another. So here I have 3 blueprints. I have this set of gears in the back, I have a little button, and I have a light bulb. If I hit play and stand on the button, the gears start turning. That's because the button has been told to communicate with the gears. Basically, it's been set up in such a way where the button looks at the gears and goes, hey, whatever you're supposed to do, just do it. So I'll jump out of the game, we'll select the button, and instead I'll tell it to talk to the light bulb, and now the next time I play, we get this amazingly branded light bulb, which I don't know if you can see from there, but I would love to fill my house full of those if I could. And we can do some more sophisticated things too. So we come over here and simulate, and you see we've got this little butterfly flying around. This butterfly has an AI system created entirely within Blueprint. So I'm going to open that up and zoom out a little bit, because it's a little complex. Now I don't have 2 monitors to show this off, but what's happening in the background, like actually on the screen right now, so here our little butterfly is recharging himself. Here in a moment, he's going to feel completely charged, and he's going to strike off in a new random direction and fly around. He'll avoid obstacles, and eventually he'll get tired again, he'll land, and he'll repeat the process. As he makes all of these decisions, we can actually watch the Blueprint network illuminate to show each thing. So it's kind of like having a window into his brain, or if you look at it another way, this is kind of like having a robotics project that you can analyze in real time. Now, you can also just do some fun things with Blueprint. So here, I have a little kind of arcade machine. I'm going to step on the button in front of it. And that was created entirely in Blueprint and exists as a game literally within my game. So I jump in, I start playing, and I only start that portion when I step on the button. Now behind me, I have this little UFO sitting here looking all cute and pretty. And if I step on the button in front of it, I can take it over. I get a new camera, I get new controls, so space will take me up, control will pull me back down, W, A, S, and D will start moving me around. So I have these kind of hover-style controls, and I can come over here and float ominously over these little unsuspecting cows. Oh, it is. It's so going to end well. So all those cows are physics objects. So I can try to pick them up and put them back in their pen. The catch to this, though, is it's harder than it looks, because sometimes cows bounce. I didn't know that before I played this game. All right, we got those. Now the cool thing is that everything you see here, this entire level that I've shown off, was actually created just by 2 artists. No programmers were needed to help put this together. So I want to take just a sec and show you how Blueprint made this possible. I'm going to press the F10 key, and what that does is that ejects me from the game. So the game is actually continuing to play without me. I'm going to select our little UFO and open up its Blueprint graph. Now there are several things going on here. At first this looks fairly simple, and in a way it is. So actually handling the motion and what the ship is doing is pretty straightforward. But then we have this section called the sequences for the abduction beam. This is actually a collapsed graph unto itself. So I can double click this node and open up a much larger graph of things that are going on. Now if it looks a little, I guess, scary at first, you have to think that to make this happen, there's a lot of stuff that needs to take place. And the more you start building games, the more you're going to see this kind of thing. We have the visual effect of the beam we have to turn on and off. We have to apply physics to an object that we abduct. Once we make it to the ship, we've got to store whatever that object was so that we can spit it out later. And then when we spit it out, we have to control what happens. That's 4 separate things. And then we have 4 networks to make each one of them happen. Now to show that off to the highest level of accuracy and to kind of show the cool things you can do with the interface, I'm actually going to take the UI and rip it to pieces for just a moment. So let's take our network, and I'll hit Windows key right, and we'll line this up fairly well, just enough to see it. Now let's take our viewport. So the actual viewport for the editor is a tabbed panel just like everything else. We just hid the tab away. Let's rip that off, and we'll do Windows left. All right, looking good so far. I think I still need my toolbar for just a second. So let's repossess this guy for just a minute. By the way, having 2 monitors is the best thing ever. I just want to throw that out as an advert for Dell monitors. So now watch this. So as I just turn the beam on and off, you can see that uppermost network toggling on and off. So those 2 wires are switching. Now in the center, the second one down, the wire is trying, so the code is trying to execute, but it's only making it so far because it's not finding anything to pick up. By the way, you'll hear me say this a lot as I talk about Blueprint. I'll say the script or the code is trying to execute. But why am I saying that? These are nodes and connections, right? When you work with Blueprint, you are actually creating compiled script. This is not a network that has to constantly execute during the game and slow you down, kind of the way Kismet used to. When you're done, when you've actually created your visual scripts, those get compiled very much the way Unreal Script did back in the day. So now, watch that second sequence as I pick an object up. Oh, you see the whole thing starts to fire. And then as soon as this guy touches the ship, the third one will execute. So now we've stored that object. Let's go store a few more so you can see that. And then when I spit something out, we can watch that 4th section execute. And the best part is that these are not all just a bunch of individual or disparate pieces. Everything is set up to work seamlessly together. Let me take just a second. I'll reassemble my UI very quickly. So we don't really need the Blueprint window open anymore. Let's take my viewport and put that roughly back where it belongs. And I'm going to play again. Let's go ahead and just go full screen on everything. So as I mentioned, all of these pieces are designed to just work together. So there's nothing really stopping me from grabbing a couple of cows and then returning back through my level. Go play with the butterflies or check out the sign, which has magically changed now that I'm piloting a spacecraft. All the way back to that environment that we built earlier. Of course, we can fly around inside of here and take a look at all the furniture we built. And of course, it's always fun to blow things up, right? Oh, did I get a roller? Is it gonna roll? Oh, so close. That's really the whole reason I did this demo. So now that you've seen a selection of features available inside of Unreal Engine 4, I want to show you what a very small group of our folks at Epic were able to do with it. This is what I'm about to show you is the work of just 3 guys who took a weekend. They're actually on a game team, so they don't have a whole lot of time to spare at the moment, and they put this together. Now once again, this is going to play live in the editor, but I'm going to go full screen just for a slightly more cinematic effect. But it is real time, so we can take a look at wireframe or remove lighting if we want to. I'm pretty sure the moral of that story is that once you become enough of a badass to catch a knife when somebody throws it at you, do not pose with it. Drop the knife, right? So again, that was just the work of 3 of our guys. They did that over a weekend. They actually did their own mocap in our studio. What you saw there is how they decide where they're going to go to lunch every day. So that really is the end of my demo. Are there any questions that I can answer from folks? Yes, sir.
How easily can you integrate like normal, like traditional kind of software programming against with Blueprint?
I'm sorry, traditional what?
Like normal programming for games, and then incorporating Blueprint sections.
Okay, so yeah, so the question was, how can you integrate, I guess, code and Blueprint together? So a workflow that we're using a lot at Epic is for our programmers to create generic classes to approach any given task. We're gonna take your pick, right? But you can expose aspects of that code in Blueprint so that somebody can go into the editor, they can instantiate that class and then expand upon it in Blueprint. So in that way, the programmer only has to create something very simple with the appropriate hooks for the artist to use, and then the artist can grab it and use Blueprint to turn it into whatever it is they need. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
The demo you showed is very cinematic. Are you looking for a more, like making using still more than games to actually movies and such?
So that is something that, of course, we would be interested in. If folks want, the question was, this demo being as cinematic as it is, are we looking at Unreal Engine 4 as being a solution that could be used in movies and so forth?
Or animations.
Movies or animations. We have a lot of people who are using the engine in a wide variety of ways, not all of which I'm allowed to talk about publicly.
The demo level with the cave, was all that, like the walls and everything, made in editor?
So the question was, the effects cave with all the particles, was all of that made in the editor? Actually, that cave is made out of a single static mesh of a rock, about yay so big, that is constantly just duped and rotated and formed into a cave. And once that level is made public, and it will be, you can totally take it apart. In fact, I think there's only 2 different types of rock in that entire project. And they just get duped and scaled and rotated into whatever you need, because you can just overlap. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
All right, awesome. Anything else? In the back.
Right now, what do you guys got for one-button exports to places that we can publish?
So right now we have the Unreal front end, which is our solution for, I'm sorry, my bad. The question was, what do we have for solutions for getting out to the different platforms that we support, essentially? So we have the Unreal front end, which allows you to export out right now to PC and to Mac, Android. Android and iOS are supported. The official output for those is PC to Android, Mac to iOS. We also have HTML5 support, which is coming. It's already in the engine. We're continuing to develop that. We also have Oculus Rift support. There is no, at this time, the subscription model does not include consoles like PS4 and Xbox One. However, that's not really on us. That is Sony and Microsoft, of course, with their licensing. However, if that's your target, that's what if you know you want to make the next PS4 game or next Xbox One game, get your project started in Unreal Engine 4 and then come talk to us. Because we're more than willing, if you've got a project and it is up off the ground and you know that's where you want to go, we want to work with you. We want you to be successful. Yes, sir?
With that, with the HTML, how, like, would it be that quality of gameplay or footage in browser? Like, or would it have to get scaled down?
It would be. Your question there is your hardware and your load times. Because I mean, again, you're processing whatever you got into whatever HTML5 magic. It's just a question of how, like, all that has to get processed down to the PC, so that it becomes hardware dependent. But if you're putting anything out on the web, you generally want to target a lower end because you never really, you can't really control what somebody's going to open it up on. Yes, sir.
You talked about programmers needing to create engineering classes for do you have a script editor available to do that?
No, so we don't have a script editor actually. The question was, do we have a script editor to allow for code editing? And I'm sorry if I didn't repeat your question earlier. So the answer is no. Right now, we do everything through Visual Studio, which ties seamlessly into UE4. And if you need to use the Express edition, that works just fine as well. So you can actually open up classes, code classes directly from the editor, and that will launch Visual Studio for you and take you right to whatever it is you need to edit. We also have a hot compiler. So if you change something, I mean, don't change a number of properties. For simple things like changing a property value, you can actually compile that in the editor and have the change take place live. So when demoing that, what I tend to do is we'll have like a gun with like a projectile of some sort. We can change the power of that projectile and tell it to compile in the editor and then start playing the game. And we'll have our original value, and then as soon as the hot compiler is done, suddenly my gun becomes more powerful. So you get some kind of semi-limited real-time compiling. Is there a question over here?
Yeah, how easy is it to move these blueprint objects between assets? So like if I'm playing in here and I say, hey, I really like that light that was easy to turn on and off, and I want to stick that into a new game, how easy is it to just drag that out of an existing project and put it into a new one?
It's approximately this easy to move things around. Check it out. So I have, like, say we like this light and I want this light to be in my next great game. I just need to right click on it and we have migrate. And this is going to tell me to save, so let's go ahead and make sure we save stuff. Well, actually I don't need to save. Then it's going to list off all of my dependencies because that blueprint object was a mesh and that was materials and that was all this other stuff. So it says, here's all the stuff you have to migrate that one asset you wanted. You click OK, you track down the folder for your new project, and you hit OK. That's it moves it over. So we do a lot of that, actually, which is why we had to have that tool. Any other questions? Yes, in the back.
What's going on with Scaleform or your current UI interface builder?
So Scaleform is no longer in Unreal Engine 4. We're taking out as much of the third-party software as we can, which if you think about it is exactly why we're able to get the source code out to people, right? So we don't have a Scaleform solution at the moment. We have Slate, which is C++ oriented right now. We have a goal and are working toward a visual editor for Slate, and other plans kind of on the line that we're working on to make the UI integration much easier for people to use. But that's kind of where we're at the moment. Folks, I am pretty much out of time, so I'm gonna have to go ahead and wrap things up now. Thank you all very much for attending, and please enjoy the rest of ECGC.